Hello and welcome to this Lazarus database video tutorial. I'm doing this on Linux because, well, but it also goes for Windows. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to connect to a database with the database components in Lazarus. This tutorial is about SQL databases as opposed to local databases, because they have much better features, backup and security, and you can support thousands of users with them. Further, SQL databases support triggers, procedures, generators and other things that can help you ease the implementation of your application. Let's have a look at the SQL databases Lazarus supports. First, on your SQL DB tab, you've got TPQ connection. This is for PostgreSQL databases. PostgreSQL is a very well-known open source database, but it's not very popular. Next, you've got Oracle. Oracle is a very well-known proprietary database. It's used by big companies. LBC is not a database, but it's an interface between the database and your application. You can connect to some database with it. Then we've got MySQL 4, 4.0, 4.1, and MySQL 5. 5 is the current version. MySQL is a very well-known, very popular open source database, and you can also get commercial licenses for it and support. And MySQL is often used in combination with the Apache web server and PHP for advanced websites. Okay, and this is Sqlite. Sqlite is a very lightweight database, and but it's not very well fit for busy multi-user environments. And then finally we've got Firebird. Firebird is originally developed by Borland as Interbase, and now it's further developed in the open source. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to connect to Firebird, but the same story goes for the other databases. Before you can do anything, you have to install a database, and I've installed Firebird and MySQL. They both support command line interface and graphical user interface. Here in this graphical user interface you see the employee database. That's an example database from Firebird. It's got everything: domains, exceptions, generators, procedures, triggers and views. And in the tables you've got the country table. I've made a select statement already on this table. As you can see, you've got Switzerland with the Swiss franc, and Italy with the lira, France with the French franc, Germany with the Deutsche mark, Netherlands with the guilder, and Belgium with the Belgian franc. These were all currencies that were used before the euro was introduced. So this example is already more than 10 years old. For MySQL, you've got the MySQL query browser graphical user interface. I've done a query here, limited to 1000 records. And this is the command line interface. MySQL got some extensions like being able to do a select 5 times 9. That's just a calculation, and you get the result here, 45. And this is MD5 hash of the value test, so you can encrypt it with MD5 encryption, and this is the result. Okay, now we can show you how to use the components. First we put on a connection component. Don't worry about all these properties, we're just going to use the properties you need to connect to the database. First we can put in the host name. If we're working on the same machine as the database is on, we can put in localhost in here. Next the database name, I'm using a alias for this, testfp. The aliases are in Linux under the /etc directory, /firebird directory. You find the aliases file, and in there you can put aliases. Now we can connect to the database, and we can do that by a login prompt. If you make this property true, you get a login box when you start the application, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put in the username here, it's Theo, and the password. Okay, now we can try to connect by setting this property to true. It stays true. If you cannot connect for some reason, it goes false and you get an error box. Now we can put on a transaction. If your database supports transactions, you put on a transaction, you connect it, and that's all you have to do with it. Next, we put on a query component. We connect it to the connection, and we can put in an SQL query. Okay, select from test tab. We can try it here. Okay, now we can activate the query by setting this to true. Again, when you get an error, this stays false, and you get an error box, so you can find out what is going on. Okay, now we can show the result of the query in a data control, but before we can do that, we have to connect the data source to our query. So dataset property of the data source we set to the query, and then we connect a data control to the data source. This is database grid. Okay, it's better. I'm going to stretch it so we get a nice interface, nice layout of our interface. When we put the data source of this data source property of this database grid to the data source we've got, we immediately get the result of the query I typed in here. This is design time, but in design time you cannot move the scroll bars. I'm going to connect a navigator component to it. Just set the data source property to the data source, and it's connected. You can put on other data controls like this, database text. It's a label. We connect it to the data source, and then we have to put the database field in. But by the connection, we already get the data name, the names of the fields in this selection box. Okay, now I'm gonna add a DB edit. I'm gonna stretch it a little so we can see there some more text in it. Data source is data source 1. Data field, you can select this text from it, and you see this value is also in this edit box. Okay, now we're gonna compile this application. Lincoln successfully built. And here's your runtime screen. Now you can move the scroll bars. This is the last record. You can move with this, the DB navigator. You can go to the first, to the last record. Okay, the last record is 3395. I'm going to use that because I'm going to show how to connect to a different machine. You just change the name of the database of the host to the machine where your external database is on, and I'm going to disconnect from our current machine and connect to the new machine. Now our query is inactivated because we lost connection. I'm going to reconnect it again. I'm going to reactivate the query again. So, and here's the data from the other machine. I'm going to run it. Now, here are records from the other machine. You can see the last record is 3941 as opposed to 3995 from the other machine. So this is a different database, and we can use the navigator. Okay, that's all. I'm going to show you that it also runs without Lazarus. These are the project files. This is the executable. It's 18.6 megabytes, so it's quite a big file size. And I'm going to launch it, and here it is. It's running. Okay, that's all. Thanks for your attention.